Hey, music lovers. Welcome to WDWNT Records, where we're turning the Disney Parks event business upside down. Just so you know what's rockin' here, we're celebrating the music and memories of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith during a once-in-a-lifetime event that's speeding your way February 28th. Former Disney Imagineers who cleared the freeway for this Hollywood Studios thrill ride will be sharing stories you've never heard before. And given that many of them include Aerosmith, maybe some you never should. You can watch the full event online live or on demand after airing for just $15, most of which will benefit Give Kids the World Village and their 40th anniversary celebration. Or you can slam on the gas, grab some backstage passes, and join us in Orlando for a day of panels and presentations, sharing behind-the-scenes stories, never-before-seen photos and artwork, and even an autograph signing with the WDI artists who composed this classic. Plus, get your hands on an exclusive limited edition pin made for our event gift.
Wait a minute, I love that idea.
So get in your Super Stretch limo and take a ride to rockinfarewell.com for tickets and more information. Well, I think that about covers it. That's the business, and the fun's just ahead. Rock on. Hey. To the Golden Jamboree, we're here with former Disney Imagineer Jim Shull. Welcome back, Jim.
Thank you for
In case you missed it, Jim was with us on Thursday night on WDW News Tonight. We talked a bit about your career, how you got started, some of your projects not related to Disney World. So if you want to hear more about Jim's career, make sure you watch the last episode of News Tonight. We're going to pick up kind of where we left off. The only thing we didn't talk about really were your Walt Disney World projects, and this is a celebration of 50 years of Disney World, so I think that makes some sense.
Yeah,
so let's talk about what you did for Florida.
Yeah, I'll probably be booed off if I don't talk about Florida. Yeah, originally what I did was, I had a real blessed career during the time. I retired from WDI this last January after 33 years. And in that period, I was really blessed by working with fantastic teams in all the theme parks around the world. But I did have a good 10-year time where I kept being brought back to work on Florida projects. The first one was a very small project, and it happened to be what's called, I think the Coke Zone was the final name. It's a little Coke kiosk. It's a spaceship above a Coke distribution.
The cool ship and the cool scanner, of course.
Yes, the cool ship and the
Sorry, we're losers.
No. Hey.
People are yelling, cool ship!
Okay, I'll join you. Because it looked like the Navigator.
Yeah.
You know, people come up and say, is that really the Navigator part? Did you steal it? And they're like, well, my lips are sealed.
Okay.
One of the Disney secrets. But trying to work that design into the aesthetic of the new Tomorrowland, the machine age, the future that never was. But at the same time, I always gravitate toward having fun because my attitude is, if I'm a guest, if I don't have fun, then the other guests won't have fun either. And again, I always design from a status of either I'm 8 to 12 years old. A little bit, I got stuck there. Part of my personality got stuck there. But at the same time, it gives me an insight into what people want. And they want to have fun. They want a great story. They want a smile. They want fun. They want to have something unexpected because you wouldn't expect to see a beverage cart be themed with a rocket ship in a cool zone and a stream of cool mist. Do they still have that?
Depends on the day.
Not the day we need it.
No, it's like the December 1st it turns on.
Yeah. Somebody should go check the timer and say it's turn it around upside down. But that was the very first project. Although I'm guilty of a lie, because the very, very first project I didn't do it as an Imagineer. Directly out of school, I was working for the Doheny Stone Drill Company, otherwise known as Hydrill. And we were based downtown LA. And they had patents on oil tool, things that everyone knows about, like oil tool stem valves, annular bolt preventers, ram blowout preventers, all the stuff everyone knows. Ha ha. But I worked there at that time directly out of school. And so the company said, hey, we've got this company up in Glendale on the line, and they want to have some of our equipment to display in this thing called Epcot, in something called the Energy Exchange. Could you go take care of that? Yeah. And so I find myself on this roller coaster for the next year and a half, helping and coordinating with the Imagineers. while still working for Hydril on supplying all the equipment that was in the energy exchange. And so I went back and forth, and they gave me an honorary Imagineer hard hat, Pico with a Pico, badge on the side, and I mucked around in the mud and waited and found myself kind of art directing, because people would walk up to me, Imagineers would walk up to me and say, well, do you think the RAM thing, by the way, a RAM blowout preventer is a piece of solid cast steel, and it's about 9 feet tall, something you don't really move easily. But the art director for Communicore would come up and say, well, should it be left or should it be right? Well, I'll go get the crane to come in here and move it for you. And so I found myself kind of a default art director for that project because of the nature of it. Anyway, so I did that. That was my very first time working on a Disney project, even when I wasn't an Imagineer.
That's amazing. Does anyone see Energy Exchange? Is that before everyone's time? Oh, Jason's racing. Of course, Jason knows Energy Exchange.
Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, we trade photographs.
all 6 photographs that were ever taken of the Energy Exchange will be traded. Yeah.
So we did that, and then fast forward, the way I got into Imagineering is I had a very good colleague, and one day he said, "Hey, call me." I was working in for a studio at the time. He said, "Come, would you like an interview?" And I said, "Why not?"
No.
And so I came down and had some interviews and negotiations and talking to people like Mike Morris and Peggy Ferris in Glendale, and they made a job offer, and I said, "This is fantastic. It doesn't get better than this." "Oh, and you're going to pay me? Even better." So actually I took a big salary decrease to go to work, but I was always a fan before I was an employee or cast member.
Yeah.
So I really jumped at that opportunity. So back to the sort of present. After the Cool Zone, I went on to work on a number of projects. I worked on 100 Years of Magic during the celebration in 2000, and was in charge of the One Man's Dream project. Yay.
So that's we actually just did counting down to the 50th. We took each decade and we did a countdown of the top several attractions from each decade. And from the 2000s, One Man's Dream had made it, which I think is incredible for something that is a museum and film up against rides and shows and the meat and potatoes of theme park. But this exhibit means so much to people that people are like, this is one of the best attractions in the 50 years of Disney World.
Well, that's fantastic that it has that longevity. When I was in the park 2 days ago, I swung by and it's still there, and I walked through and it's just almost exactly the way it was conceived to open.
Other than the meet and greet.
Yeah, except for a few things. I mean, they took out some of the models and swapped them for others, and I didn't go to the film, and I should have done that, but generally it's still there, which I guess is a testimony to its longevity and guest interest in the subject of Walt. Because again, backing up, I'm a storyteller by nature. And it's natural that you would have Walt in the park on his 100th birthday. But I always work from the assumption of there is actually somebody who does not know who Walt Disney is. And so it's more than a museum because anyone can tell that story.
Yeah.
It had to be more of a narrative, and it had to be a linear walk through Walt's life and what that meant. Because again, we're standing in what was 50 years ago, Swampland. And it was one man's dream that led us to build, not me, royally me, but other people, open Walt Disney World 50 years ago. And then from there, all the expansions in Epcot and Studio and Animal Kingdom and so forth. So it's a large story, and it's told in a little bitty space.
Yeah. So. Essentially, like 2 hallways and a waiting room and a theater, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the challenges, and it speaks to the challenge of being a designer. There's always the dream of what you want to do, and then the reality of what you can do.
Yeah.
And the reality always runs up against schedule, budget, possibilities, some things you want and you just can't do them.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can, because I said and felt strongly, we need to bring something of Walt's person and his personality and his property here to Florida. So I went to Anaheim, which had one of the 2 Walt's offices. his actual office.
Yeah.
And said, you know what we need to do? We need to pull up a flatbread, get a museum curator in here, box this office up, and we'll take it to Florida.
And it was in Anaheim. Was it at Disneyland?
It was
in
at
the
Disneyland.
The Lincoln Theater?
Yeah, it was in the Lincoln building.
Yeah.
The Lincoln Theater. I think it's the
The
Disneyland.
Opera House.
The Disneyland, somebody else will know this, but isn't it the Disneyland Opera House?
Yeah.
Which was the original wood mill for the park when they
Yeah.
were building that, yeah?
Yeah, and I think that big window is still there. They put that big park map in there now, but I think that's where it used to be.
Yeah, and they also have the Disneyland miniature model of as it was, the park was in 1955, which is cool. If they turn their back, that's gone, I tell you. It's just, if I'm there alone, they turn their back, it's gone. I didn't say that, by the way. No one heard that, did they? Oh, yeah, that's a live stream.
Yep,
Oh,
just streaming to the internet. No big
oh
deal.
well, not a problem.
But what was the lead time on that project? Like, at what point did they decide we're doing 100 years, we need a museum?
It was about 18 months.
In 18
it
months.
was really short, and it was a challenge was, well, for example, Walt's office, we had to jackhammer the floor because originally that's all unused space or space used for other purposes.
Yeah.
And if you put the office on the level of the existing grade, you wouldn't be able to see it. And so I said, we've got to jackhammer this concrete and pour new concrete in order to have a lower floor for Walt's office to sit in. So
Yeah.
when we have a wall with glass and the guests are behind it, they're looking down and across the entire office, not just at something, they're looking down and across it. It makes it more grand, more magical, and you can see it in more detail.
Yeah. But then they eventually took their office back.
Did they?
Yeah, so because they restored it in the actual space. Yeah, so now we just have that decal there.
Yeah.
But yeah. What were some of any other memorable pieces in there or interesting stories?
Well, we had the Tree of Life.
Yeah, the big
that
model,
was even just a lot of these models we had to restore, because when you have something like Tree of Life, it's at that time I think probably 2 or 3 years old, maybe even longer, and it had to be repainted and restored. We took some models out of the secret Disney Imagineering warehouse, and it's like going into the Indiana Jones Temple Apparel warehouse. At the end of
Everything
it,
just crated.
Everything's created.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You open boxes, you go like, whoa, what's in there? Oh, amazing models. But anyway, so we went through that and did a curation, because it's like a buffet. You would walk through and say, I have X amount of square feet and this much money for these many cases, and I want to tell the entire global story and give credit to each of the parks and the major beats.
Yeah.
And so then just starting to pick the boxes in the warehouse and then bring them out, restore the models and then recreate them and truck them down here for installation.
No. Did you work on the film at all, or just the museums?
To the extent of making sure that the film spoke or did not contradict
that they aligned, right?
Yeah, it's all about coordination.
One coherent story, right?
Mm-hmm. So they did that, and then it was very successful. I did notice one thing though, in the front of the marquee, they have the marquee, and then we had a cutout of Walt.
Yeah.
Sitting on a stool with Mickey, and now that's gone.
Yeah, so what they did, they turned it into, at one point, Walt Disney Presents. And so they, seasonally, they would, obviously the museum doesn't change much, they had a couple things at the end.
Right.
And then they do the film previews. They got real big on film previews for a while.
Well, isn't that how the studio started when the original, those of you who remember the original studio
That's
tour?
the Daily
Yeah, you'd
Theater,
walk through the
no?
Daily
Yeah.
Theater.
Or was Voyage the Daily Theater?
Voyage was the Daily Theater.
Yeah.
Then they built a new theater behind, and it gets very murky. I'd have to go back. But they built a couple
block of buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's still one animation courtyard. Still
Kind
called
of,
it.
yeah.
With Star Wars, with Star Wars, animation plus
They have
Star
animated
Wars.
series.
Yeah, there's some
Works.
animation in there. Yes,
Yeah.
that's fine. Better, something that's unused is an opportunity for the future.
There you go.
So moving on, and forgive me, I probably bounce around because that's what 33 years does to
Yeah.
you.
I was going to say, there's got to be some stuff between the cool ship and 100 years.
Well, actually, there is something, and it took a long time to do, so it's probably the biggest bulk of the story, and that was Rock and Roller Coaster. So one of the things that, okay, I'll back up. Theme park rides happen for a lot of reasons, and they're very different reasons, and there's no one reason why something occurs. One thing that Disney World did not have was a high-speed thrill roller coaster. It had things like Thunder and Space Mountain, which are great, but they're really pitched more to family. But, so we didn't have the beat of a big, massive.
Nothing super modern, right? Because
Super
I
modern.
think was Big Thunder at that point. Big Thunder was the last, other than Barnstormer. I think Big
Barnstormer
Thunder
came,
had been-
no, Stormer came after, because I did Barnstormer, which was based on the Gadget Go coaster in Disneyland Anaheim.
Yeah.
They're identical, copy exact, mirror clones of the track.
Yeah, but no thrill coaster in Florida. I think since from '80 to then. Yeah.
No, they never had one. But at the same time, so that was a desire. And at this point, Disneyland Paris had opened, and they had just, I think, a year or two after they opened Discovery Mountain, which was actually opened as Space Mountain.
Yeah.
And it was a 3-inversion coaster with a push or a launch up out of the cannon, and then you dived in the mountain and you did the 3 inversions. So it's
Which
definitely
changed the industry forever. That
yeah,
ride,
yeah, it did, because they're really, people always think that you could do a launch coaster, but no one wants to take that leap of faith until you see it for the first time.
Yeah.
And that did. It was a phenomenal attraction, still is.
Yeah.
And the classic version with the soundtrack is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, right
And
on.
everyone's hoping for the 30th of Disneyland Paris, we get Old Space Mountain. That's the.
It'd
the
be
hope.
good. It'd be good. I'd go through my files. The original original marquee Discovery Mountain was installed briefly, and there's some it's like the photographs we just talked about. They're a little, like the energy change. There's a few photographs taken of Discovery Mountain.
And of course, they left the little signs on the bridge. Still
There
say
are.
DM, yeah.
Yeah, and on the although they used to be on the trains, but when they replaced those trains and they took that off,
Yeah.
weep. I don't know. It's weep. It's
Yeah.
so anyway, that opened, and so people were really excited about that, and they said, we should do this in Florida. This is really cool. We should do it in Florida. One of the lessons in design you learn is something cannot be a copy exact necessarily. There are exceptions, but rare ones, and there are reasons for that. You have different countries, counties, cities have different building codes.
Yeah.
There are civil codes. There are different cultures of how people perceive and use a ride.
Yeah.
So you may start out with the idea of, let's go clone Space Mountain Paris. But the reality is it starts to change and mature and kind of take another direction, which is what Rock and Roller Coaster did.
Yeah.
They always wanted to do a roller coaster based on music,
Yeah.
because you have the studio, which is about film and television and radio and a little bit about live entertainment.
It's
But-
like the one genre that wasn't really represented.
And they never
right?
touched that
We had a
one.
music parking lot, but there wasn't a lot of music representation in the park.
No,
Yeah.
that was a miss, but it was an opportunity.
Yeah.
So there was a team that came over from Paris and said, okay, we'll do this. And they started to do the work on it and due diligence and think about it. But for a variety of reasons, it just didn't get traction. They couldn't crack the code, we'd call it in Imagineering. They couldn't they couldn't solve that problem. Well, I'm a coaster nerd, among other things.
Yeah.
And so I went to the show producer for Rock and Roller Coaster and said, how's it going? He said, well, it could be better. I said, give me a few hours, Paul, and let me come back to you on Friday. And so I came back on Friday, and I grabbed one of the ride engineers out of the ride group, and he and I took thin gauge wire and a piece of foam core and started to bend wire into shapes of the roller coaster, the things that we wanted. And again, believe me, it was crude because I glued my fingers together. But it was enough to then take on that Friday to the team and then to the management and go, we think you could do this. And everyone went, okay, looks like you probably have thought about this. And so here's the money. And by the way,
They just hand it to you.
yeah, and it's like 10s and 20s.
Someone opens a safe and just like, here you go.
Here's money. Go spend it wisely. Yeah, please. 10s and 20s. So we took that money and we took a small team. And again, I really work very well with small teams.
Yeah.
I think big teams have their place, but my projects have always been very small people, very small teams, because everyone has the authority, and I like to find the very best person for that role. and give them the authority, but also the responsibility. And then they own it, and they always get the best work for that.
How do those teams come together at WDI? Like, do you like go recruit people? You go like knock on a cubicle and be like, hey, you seen this thing? Do you want to be involved in this?
Well, you know, okay, there's a hallway culture.
Yeah.
A strong hallway culture. And so, you know, you would find someone like, hey, Tom, I know that you really like this and this and this and this. So the next time I have a project that falls into your expertise, I'd come and knock on your door and say, are you busy? Can I get 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And I start pitching you about how exciting your life will be the next 5 years. And you don't really need to see your family ever again. And it's going to be fantastic. And then, you know, you're going to go, yeah, let's do that. And I do that in a couple places, and you get the key roles filled that way. And then you build your team from there. Because at some point, I call it the machine, where you have, you know, if you want to go do tender documents to go to the county or city, you know, those are people who have expertise, and you need, I don't know, 30 of them. You need civil engineers to make sure all the water runs downhill. You need 20 of them. But they come later. The core team are the people who conceive and carry the idea of the ride, and then they communicate the requirements to the others. And in that process, one of the key members is going to be your estimator. And I know there's a little bit of controversy where some people hate the estimator because it's always bad news. It's always Dr. Doom coming in the door to tell you you're over budget.
There's something, something's not going to survive the project, right?
Yeah, but I always looked at it more as an opportunity, and I would interview the estimator, say, well, where's the money? Why is it this much? What can I take out or change or alter in order to get back to budget? And it was always successful. It always worked. So moving on, now we're at the point where we're starting to build the models for real. And we have, that team has grown beyond 30 to maybe 80-ish. And we're doing design for the building. And we're doing design for the ride. And we go talk to a ride manufacturer, and we make a decision, no, we don't want them for various reasons, we want the other person. And so we definitely commit to that person. And at that point, we have the basic, we have a tent pole. You know, whatever happens in that building, it has to accommodate that ride, and the ride is X by X by X. It's a box, it's a space. And so then, oh, well, that space has to have air conditioning. It has to have air, it has to have power, it has to have drains. Well, those start to become requirements, so now you get more people, and now that's starting to build your team beyond the 80 to the 100 to 200 people. And a lot of people I never see except at the team parties and go, hi, how are you? But they're required. And that's why, you know, Imagineering, no one person ever does anything. It's an entire team, and many of them are invisible. And also, though, we would start to engage with the park. So in this case, it was Walt Disney World, and it was the studio. And by the way, I always call this studio tour because I worked on the original park, and we always codename with studio tour. So if you ever find someone who calls the Disney Hollywood Magic Studio by studio tour, you know they worked on it. Secret. So we worked on that, and now we're ready to, you know, break ground. We did the tender docs, and everything's good, and we break ground in the parking lot behind Tower of Terror. But the design aspect starts to be built, and originally when I came to the project, I looked through the archives of what talks about Hollywood. You're at the end of Sunset Boulevard, and so I looked at old studios, like the Chaplin studio caught my eye, which is this old Tudor brick building from the 1920s, and it was built by Chaplin, and now it's owned, actually, the headquarters for the Henson Company. But I started with that, and I would draw elevations, because again, I communicate through art, although now you would never know it because I'm talking. But I would draw, and I would keep drawing, and the drawing I did of the old Chaplin building had a billboard with a roller coaster, and on the guitar neck, the roller coaster came off of it. And I like that. And that's what I would do. I'd go home, think about it, come back. I like that. So I'm going to do 2 billboards, and the coaster will jump between billboards. And I went home, came back. I like that a lot more. And so then I got rid of the building. And then I made this giant billboard, and then I said, well, who needs a billboard? Just build a giant guitar. And so that's a demonstration of the evolution of thinking. And in the middle of that, there's going to be intermediate stops to say, is this possible? Because what you see out here at the studio is a Fender Red Stratocaster. It's a real guitar, and it was 2 scale. And I know that because I went out to Guitar City and bought 2 Red Stratocaster guitars. And the idea there, we were going to copy them. And I like to think outside the box a little bit, and I thought, you know, I have an option here. I could go to our fantastic crack dimensional design team, hand them the guitar and say, duplicate that. Or I can just take that guitar I just bought that we know works and have them cut the neck off at the angle I want, and then take that to the show vendor.
Yeah.
And so I took it to the dimensional designer, Smitty, who I've known for a long time, and he plays. And so I handed him the guitar and he said, oh, this is great. I said, now cut the neck off. And it's like a grown man with tears coming out. I'm exaggerating, but for the sake of the story, imagine grown man tears coming out. But it worked, and the thing is, it worked because we brought it here to Tampa. Tampa was where we built the guitar. Full size, if you're familiar, bead foam is a sub-project property or product that you'd find if you buy a refrigerator or a big appliance. You find a box with this white popcorny foam, and they built it out of that. And they poured lots of 2-part cement into it because it's porous, and we built it full size. And if you go on the internet and search around, you'll find photographs of the guitar in its glory as white bead foam down in Tampa. But that was something we brought here. Now the coaster was different because it was built by a company in Vlodrop in the Netherlands. And so they are an old company. At the time, they were pre-digital. So I'd walk into the factory and it would all be red brick. And they'd have a plumb rod hanging from the ceiling. And they would bring a piece of steel in, measure it, look at the plumb rod. They'd have a second rod over here, they'd measure that, and then they'd take it into a bending machine. And the bending machine, if I go into detail, stop me please, because this is...
Does anyone have a problem with him going into detail? No, thank you.
Okay. My wife tells me I go into the weeds, really.
This is the crowd for this.
Well,
we love every little detail. Like, you tell us anything you did on this project. Go for it.
Well, the process for a coaster, when you take the pipe rail that you're riding on, you would take it, and once you mark it, you put it into a machine that would bend it. But you can only bend it in one angle. You can't do multi-dimensional bends.
Yeah.
Now that's different today. We're in a digital world. Back then it was an analog world for this coaster. So we bend it, and then once you do the right bend, then you take it out, turn it, and send it through again to get the second bend, which gives you your complex curve.
Yeah.
You do enough of that, and you have a roller coaster. So we would do all of that, and they would build it, and then I'd go over and meet and give notes and approve. And then they put it in container ships and bring it over here to Orlando and start to install.
Yeah.
And they installed it in the parking lot behind Rock and Roller Coaster, which had been the former site for the Disney Feature Animation Florida unit. Again, if you go online, you'll find these old photographs of what looked like prefab trailers.
Yeah.
And that was the headquarters before the new building for feature animation down here. So we started building, and we poured the slab in multiple parts. It was, I think at the time, it was the largest slab pour in Disney history.
Oh.
Because you have to pour what they call a rat slab,
Yeah.
which is 6 inches, no, 18, or 6 or 18, I forget on that, I'm not gonna, don't quote me. But then you pour the actual
No
slab.
one quote on the size of the slab.
So then you pour the finish coat, which is your thinner coat, and then to that you start to apply the bolts and the support structure for the columns, and on top of that you mount the coaster. Then finally you build the building around it.
Yeah.
It's
Which
like
I think it's the most it's such a wacky building. And now, like, the Guardians coaster they're building at Epcot is very similar, where it starts in one building, and there's a tunnel, and then there's another building, right? And Rock and Roller Coaster is kind of like that. You have like the load building with the queue and everything, the tunnel, and then that big tall soundstage looking building.
Yeah, and that's evolved, because originally when it was opened, I made a choice to follow the architectural stylings of the backlot at the time, which was more of an industrial, gritty backlot. So it was just corrugated steel all the way around the Gravity building, which is the reason why the front building had all the money poured into it. As I said earlier that I was drawing the Chaplin building. Finally, I abandoned that, and I went to the old RKO building in Hollywood, which had the very much Art Moderne streamlined look. So you had the 3 curves and then the curve on top. And again, I don't like to cheat at solitaire, but I want you not to look at that big Gravity building in the back because it's steel. And also, I don't want you to think that you're ever going to go there. I want your focus to be in the foreground. And so there was a very nice, streamlined, modern building in front, and in foreground of that was the big red guitar. Because that's the thing your eye goes to first. Oh, there's a big guitar. Never saw that before. Take a photograph. Then you'll see the building as a backdrop, and then if you happen to notice that steel buildings that matches all the other steel buildings back there, is it background noise? It's the background element. You don't
Well,
go
the park
there.
helped set that up, right? Because your whole day in that park, at least back then there was more of those buildings. Your whole day would be those soundstage-looking buildings kind of in the next layer behind every facade, right? So I think you just, at that point in the day, they probably start blending in a bit. You're like, oh, there's sound stages all over this park. And that one's so, like, with the tunnel there, that's so set back that I don't think most people realize it's connected.
No, and that was intentional, is to lower the roof of the line to make sure that you never see it. The only place you got a little glimpse was in the outdoor queue, because there was a wall that separated you from the back of the house.
So between the roof and the...
underneath in the queue roof. And you can, if you know what to look for, but again, there's no signage, there's nothing, it doesn't look important.
And it's so far, like, I don't think a regular guest would look out there and be like, oh, that's got to be where we're going. I can't imagine.
And
Us, we are who we are.
I know, well, but these are all intentional decisions. So once you're inside the building, it was going to be a record studio. So started working with Kevin Rafferty, who was the showrunner for that attraction. And from meetings and charrettes and talking and making sure that no one had copyrighted this name, we ended up with a play on what the ride was, which was G-Force. And so it became G-Force Records. And the whole idea was, it's about gravity, it's about G-Forces you're about to experience, but also it had a real kind of believable record company sound. Like there's Slash Records. Well, we have G-Force Records. It's something you could believe someone would really do.
On a side note, how had no one used Rock and Roller Coaster before? How did that not exist already, or did it?
Let's see. I've got to remember how much of the NDA is still covering me right now. Because there was a Rock and Roller Coaster, and it was in Opryland.
Okay.
If you anyone here ever been in the original Opryland? Yay! Love for Opryland. Anyone on screen can also yell, and we believe you. But anyway, Rock and Roller Coaster was a small mine train coaster like a Thunder Mountain, and it was in Opryland. But Opryland closed, but they had the name. They had the name for a roller coaster, and so we really, really, really wanted that name. I really wanted the name. So I talked to Marty Sklar, who made a call. And I told Marty, I really, really want this name, Marty. Don't ask for a lot, but I really, really want this name. So he said, calm down and leave, and leave the office. So Marty made a call. He made a call to someone who worked for Gaylord Entertainment. And at this point, Opryland had closed. It was going to become, I think, a shopping mall. But it closed. They didn't need the name, but they had the name. They could show a line to the name. So Marty, made his call, and we got the name.
That's great.
So
no one's going to forget Rock and Roller Coaster.
No, it's because I really, really wanted the name. So that's kind of the sidebar. Things never have a linear story to how you build rides, but that was getting us the name was that way. And then inside, we wanted to step into a record studio, and I took the team. We went to many record studios in Los Angeles, large and small. So we're trying to give a feeling for, well, if you go to a record recording studio, there's a lot of stuff that's not very interesting, frankly. It's like wires and cables and back and chairs and uneaten lunches. It's not a good place to go to.
It just sounds like you're explaining this place today.
Well, I was trying to be kind. But my point, Tom, is that you go into a place and you want to take the best of. And again, people are distracted and talking to their family members as we want them to. So we made these display cases with real equipment that we bought, and it was authentic and antiques and beautiful equipment with explanations, and so you can learn something as you're in the queue. And the marble doors in the front were, just something else I fell on my sword for, because I really, really wanted the tactility of, be able to run your hand over it, because.
And people love those doors. The COVID was the worst because I was like, I can't touch the door now.
No, you
we all
can't
thought it
touch
was
it.
the touch thing, and I was like, I can't do it.
Well, it was a simple thing because it would have been so easy to lock those marbles into, something, and we didn't want to do. I didn't want to do that. I shouldn't say we here because it's me.
But it's gratifying, right? Like
It
you
is
want
gratifying.
People to be like, oh, that's fun.
You touch it, you get it. It actually reacts. Oh,
Yeah.
what happens when I do this? Oh, I hear something. Oh, I see something happening. I spin the marbles. That's a really good thing. I want to do that.
It's fun. Yeah.
I want to do more of that. And then the record, which is directly overhead in the lobby. And by the way, I'm speaking really opening day. I know that they changed things when they added Fast Pass, but opening day, we had the big steel record in the ceiling, and that all stainless steel. It was brushed steel, and the same vendor who did a lot of the ornamentation and props for the new Tomorrowland, the future that never was, the props that are gone. But they also did that record.
Your cool ship has survived somehow, some way.
I know.
Robo Newsman is dead. Everything
It's
else.
like, we've got photographs, so that's something. And our memories.
And the cool ship.
And the cool ship. So, proceeding in the queue, again, when you do a ride, you do a cadence and you do editing. So after you have the setup of here we are invited into GeForce Records, now we're going to go into the recording studios. And as you're going through the queue, there are doors that are faux doors, fake doors with speakers behind them to make you believe there are other studios. And then there's another display case, and then you're brought into Studio C. In the Studio C, we had you walk into this actual sound stage or studio, recording studio, and all the props you saw when we opened were from Aerosmith. They were extremely gracious to actually give us their props. So
They were very excited to be involved, right? Steven Tyler's a big fan of the
and
park.
Joe Perry,
Yeah.
Joe and Steven, we went up to, we had them down at, here to ride, went up north to their restaurant, went touring with them to get a sense of what they wanted. Because people articulate things, but they don't tell you all their backstory or why they want their coffee cup to the left, not the right. And so everything there was carefully, we'd go and follow them where they put down their coffee cup and their creamer, and it would be on the left and the right side. And we take photographs of that. And, sometimes they don't want the coffee all the way to the top because it can spill. So it's poured 2/3 of the way down. So we document that. And then,
I want to know where these photos are of Steven Tyler's coffee.
oh yeah,
This sounds like the greatest thing. Just somewhere at WDI, Steven Tyler's coffee. There's a whole folder.
there is. It happens. I've got my photos. So and also his bandana, his scarves.
Yeah.
He said, "Do you want these scarves?" We said, "Can we have the clean ones, please?" the less used ones, loved but used. So we did that, and then we had the film, and it was a high def film. It was a state of the art for its time.
Yeah.
Pre-digital, so when you sit in the room and you look at the screen, there's a massive projection room behind.
Yeah.
Which again, we're in a digital world, so in that massive production room.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, Florida's, which is a duplicate of Paris's, I've been back there, and it's just used for other things now because technology eliminates the big bin reels and projections.
Yeah.
But in there has to be a story. So why am I about to get on a death-defying 3 inversion coaster? And so you have the guys and the recording engineer working, and suddenly their agent comes in. And I was really adamant, and Kevin and I talked a lot about this, but there had to be a reason. And again, I can't play music at all. I can't sing. I drive this room, make this room empty if I start to try. But I'm a really big fan.
Yeah.
So that became the entry point to this story, that I'm their biggest fan. Everyone in this room is their biggest fan, and they see us, and so they tell, Steven tells their agent, we can't go to the concert we have to have all of our biggest fans come with us. And so she says, okay, fine, I don't want to do it, but you're the boss. Calls, it says, I need a stretch limo. I need a big car, stretch limo, a really big car. And the reason that line's there is because, again, ultimately you're going to have to marry it to the reality of the coaster, which is a 24-passenger vehicle, and it's really long. But so I'm going to give you as a guest the reason why it's something that big. That
So why is there an insane limo? I now
why is
story
that?
know why.
And so suddenly, she says, well, the explanation is it's a really big car. Steven wants you to go, and he has to give you a really big car. So you exit, and now you come out in the studio, outside the studio at night on Sunset Boulevard in that location. And as you look up, you'll be looking into street lights. And the reason for that is when you look up into lights, your irises dilate, so that you don't see all the conduits and the air conditioning above you. Again, a trick, but it's a cheap trick, but it's a good trick. And so your eyes go down to the ground level and you hear background sounds, and then you go into the lock and roll parking garage, which makes sense because now you see an operator's booth that you'd find in a parking garage that we bought. Again, why build something, design it if you can just go buy it? The same with all the K-rail. K-rail's in front, it's concrete. I said, I want concrete K-rail. And people try to talk me out of that. And I said, no, if it ships, it gets stained. It's just,
it looks right.
It looks right. So let's get more people in here and haul us some concrete K-rail in here. So put that in. Because one of the conceits I had is, I never wanted you to see the inversions because that gives away the gag, but I did want you to be played fair with. So that's why in the queue, you'll have to see 2 launches. And the theory is, if you look and you see 24 people screaming into the darkness and decide not to go, that's fair, you can leave. But if you accept that, you probably are going to be okay with an inversion. So that's the reason why you have to see 2 launches. But eventually you do end up in the lock and roll, and then you go and you secure, and then you go around to the load position, from the load to the launch position, and you hear the DJ from the radio station, and then over that comes Steven and Joe, and they do the countdown, and there are multiple tracks, multiple versions, and then you're launched, and you hear one of the recorded tracks, because we brought Aerosmith to Glendale to record them. And they're all new tracks, or all new tracks, or they are revised older tracks. Because if you had a 3-minute song and you've got a 2-minute coaster ride, you got to cut somewhere. So we would edit, cut, and record. And we did make a change because originally we took one of the songs, Love in an Escalator, and then made it Love in a Roller Coaster.
Well, Love in an Elevator.
Love in an Elevator.
I would love in an escalator so completely. We don't. It's very dangerous. You get caught.
Don't do that.
I'll try. Lost some good shoes. Then.
Only shoes?
The shoelaces come out. It is what it is.
So there was that, and when it opened, it was incredibly successful. When we did a soft opening rope drop, I was talking to some team members, and I had my back to the entry. Standing in the plaza, and I suddenly felt this burst of hot air in my back, and it was the day that they suddenly dropped the rope, and suddenly 800,000 people run in, and human bodies produce a lot of heat, and it was remarkable. So they all ran in and got on the roller coaster and had a great old time.
What is that like? That first time you see guests come off the ride? I know I've heard people explain how meaningful that is before. What does that mean to you when you see the smiles?
Well, that's really the payoff. That's the reward. I mean, personally for me, there's always midway in the projects, I have to tell myself that somebody actually believed me enough when I show them a drawing and ask for a lot of money, that they'd actually give me a lot of money and do something. Because remember, the ride hadn't opened. We didn't know if it would succeed or fail. We thought it'd succeed, but you never know. So I'm always kind of fingers crossed through the last 18 months of our project until you get that gratification and affirmation that, it worked. The team, the ideas that led to the team growing and mobilizing were good ideas, and it was worth the time. It was worth your 5 years, Tom. When I met you in the hallway to grab you and inspire you to work on this?
There you go. And then it was duplicated for Paris,
Yes. Yeah, it was.
where I have to tell you, I've been on the Paris one. What's happening? I don't, like, I've been very confused in that one. I don't, it's not the same story.
Let's see.
Like, I got in the pre-show, it's like, oh, it's a different pre-show. And then they didn't speak to me. We just went on the ride. I was like, oh.
Oh,
Steven Tyler's like looking at a roller coaster. He's going like this, and then we just go in, and I'm
they
like,
go
oh.
in. So they didn't stop you in Studio C?
Is there like a full pre-show?
Yeah,
Was
there's
there?
a full film.
Oh, it was like, you kind of hear them talking about this roller coaster, and then you just kind of move.
Yeah, when you
we
go
just
in,
kinda moved
to
on.
our version in Florida, you have the two doors. The doors open, you file
Yeah.
in Studio C, and they're doors. And so you're there for the full story.
Yeah.
Once the full story's ended, then the doors open,
Yeah.
and you go out to into the alleyway. In Paris, that's not the case, evidently. I know I've been there.
never been spoken to by Steven Tyler in that
Never?
attraction.
He didn't
I,
say
I
anything?
mean, my experience is all like towards the end of its life. I don't know.
I don't know
I
either.
don't,
but
I don't think Axel's here to clarify. I don't think Axel's
We'll get-
our Parisian.
We'll get Axel's view.
We'll find out later.
But no, I've been on it one time. I can confirm what you said.
Yeah.
One time when that happened, the doors open, you walk in, and you just flow through.
Yeah.
You could stand there,
But also, I don't know, like the Florida attraction. You go, there's other story beats that like tell me what's going on, right? Like the DJ, Steven Tyler, the signage above the launch. Like I feel like if I missed the pre-show, I could still pick up on Florida. In Paris, I felt like I'm at it. There's a lot of lights, and it's a very industrial room. That load room.
Yeah, it was a different team.
Okay. Did you work on the Paris?
No, that was a
Oh,
different team.
okay.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I did not. I was working on the second gate
Okay.
and worked on it. But I only consulted on Rock and Roller Coaster because that was really baked. We knew what that was.
Yeah.
You know, the major things that would be a challenge are the building, the ride system, logistics, all of that. That's pretty much known.
Yeah.
And Paris decided to put Rock and Roller Coaster in their industrial backlot.
Yeah.
So that kind of drove that decision about what you were going to do with it and what kind of story you're going to tell. And also talking to the team, the Gravity building doesn't have the set pieces, it has light and fog.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be as if you're in a concert.
Okay.
And you're riding the music. So that was that. However, having said that, if you were going to try to ride it today, you can't because it closed to be rebuilt, redesigned into the Ironman. Well, I don't think they've announced that yet, so I didn't say the full word, but it is Avengers Campus for Disneyland.
Well, there's some
Paris.
art has been released. We at a press event and stuff. I think we have that, Jake. What's been released thus far? This is a promo image Disneyland Paris put out.
Oh, that.
Of the train.
That's my
and
art.
then they also put out the pre-show.
Yeah.
But there's Iron Man in like a queue.
That's me.
Oh, this has been out too. This is you.
Yeah, this is all my art.
Oh, cool.
I didn't know you had this.
This is out there.
Wow, okay.
See, they don't all
I'm
look
free to
what we're
talk.
posting about. Yeah, and there's Iron Man, and this is
Okay.
all out there.
I
yeah.
guess I should be looking over here. Well, yeah.
It's the first time Jim's seen this.
What?
Yeah, there's the big. That was
that
photographed.
was-
I guess that was up on screen at some Inside Ears event in
Yeah,
Paris.
they changed. I did the original art, and then they didn't like the angle of the Iron Man head, so they photoshopped a new head angle on it. But that's
Yeah.
mine. Yeah, this was a lot. So wow, this is like memory lane.
We're honored to be here
Lane.
for the first time. You've seen the concept art
Okay, so I was
without you working on it.
So I came off of executive creative director for Shanghai on the hotel in Toy Story Land there, and they started phoning me there in Shanghai and say, we have something else we want you to look at, which is to lead the design team for Paris. And one of the things we want you to revisit is Rock and Roller Coaster. Now, as a rule, I never return to the scene of the crime because I don't want to duplicate myself.
Yeah.
But once they said, oh no, this is new, I went, fix the problem now. So it became the Iron Man coaster. Now, what you're going to see is very much the same structure and building, but it's a completely new show and a completely new story. And it fits within the Avengers Campus in Disneyland Paris, under construction now.
Yes. Nearing completion, we think. Yeah.
Yeah, near opening soon in your neighborhood, if it's
Yeah.
in Marne-d'Avely. But no, that's part. They announced they get the Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Ride.
web slingers, that, and some restaurants.
They
some dining.
they get PIM, but they get it on a massive scale, and they get.
Yeah.
I don't think they've released the name on the other restaurant.
No, we've
but
just seen the Hulkbuster suit
yeah,
sitting
it's,
in the
it's,
restaurant.
it looks like something where it looks like an industrial factory where superheroes who have industrial costumes and armor that need to be repaired might go to.
Oh, cool.
Might.
Yeah.
Like the Hulkbuster might go.
I'm excited for the big PIM because I think we went to Avengers Campus in California. It's a very limited interior for PIM there, but I love that interior.
Well, it was it was an opportunity because in Paris, because of the weather, they prefer things inside.
Yeah.
And inside means more space means more storytelling opportunities. So it was a way of leveraging all of that. And they have a very big menu that they're going to be doing. And it's very much more of a, Howard Stark had his factory. Again, I think this has been released. If not, I'll get a phone call after this meeting.
Is your phone ringing right now?
No, it's on silent. It's on silent. But I'll say this much, and I know I'm clear. In the same way that Anaheim, they talk about the story of Tony Stark's involvement.
Yeah.
In the same way, this is Tony Stark's involvement, but now in Europe.
Yeah. I know we're running late already, and Don Dorsey will send the Inferno barge after me eventually. I'll be in trouble. I'll be tied to it. But I do want to quickly talk about, you were involved in the Ratatouille attraction originally when it was created for Paris.
Yes.
And obviously that just opened here, so I don't know if you have any quick fun stories or tidbits you want to share about working on that project.
Well, other than the Pixar team was phenomenal, very, very great. And it was interesting, again, it's always good to go and get what I call dispensation. So I would go to John Lasseter or Brad Bird, who was the director of the movie, and I would have a set of assumptions about how much story we're going to tell. So I'd show a set of elevations. I would draw, again, I draw. So I do elevations of all the building fronts. And they were, I just said, okay, it's in the movie, it's got to be in the drawing, it's going to be built in Paris. And I would work with Harley, who was a production designer, and he said, oh, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that. So he actually took stuff that I drew out, which all the estimators went, hooray, that's money. Stuff is money.
Yeah.
So we did that. As far as funny stories, probably the biggest story you probably have heard is when you go into the, I think, second scene or third scene, when you go into the pantry and you have the giant food.
Yeah.
And in France, the giant sausage, there's a piece of food that was just so large, it triggered French code. So it had to have its own sprinkler system inside the sausage.
So you're telling me there's a sausage with a sprinkler system?
Yes, in it, because it triggered French code.
That is the most Disneyland Paris thing I've ever heard.
So we had that. And then, unfortunately, what I'm disappointed by is we had a really great restaurant in Paris. Because if you exit...
Has anyone been to Bistro Chez Remy? No, I love that. Every time we go, I have to eat there.
Well, it's a couple things. The park really wanted an indoor step-it-up restaurant, so we did that. Plus, it's the last beat in the film. So it's the ultimate payoff of Remy's success.
Yeah.
And I hope, fingers crossed, that maybe in some way they can bring that here to Florida, because it just feels like it's something we should do.
It is the most charming interior. Just the umbrella, the drink umbrella tables. There's little cork seats. Every inch, like even the tables. All around the restaurant, it'll be the top of a sardine can. But if you look at the bottom, it'll be like the top of a can as the support of the table.
And there's a logic to it as far as scale, because everything scales. So if you have the corkscrew or the cork head and the sardine can, they are relatively the same scale to each other.
Yeah.
So.
And then the plates are giant, and they make up your booth.
And we have the ivy in the ceiling and the walls and
the big Christmas lights.
The Christmas lights. We love the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
I keep doing things with Christmas lights over and over again.
It works, right?
Who doesn't love Christmas lights?
If big Christmas lights work, just keep doing it.
Yeah, I want to do bubblers in my next job. Big Christmas bubblers. But yeah, we did that, and that was fun. And the very last thing, I did here was the Aladdin attraction, the Aladdin spinner,
The magic carpets.
the magic carpets of Aladdin. And just in the interest of time, I'll just condense that. But one of the things about it was, there was a parade here in Florida where they had an Aladdin, and
Royal Caravan at
the
MGM.
Royal Caravan, and they
Yeah.
had spinning camels, and the heads would turn and spit at you.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of life of the parade, they moved them. I think did they move them as a studio prop?
The soundstage restaurant entrance, which is where Disney Junior is now, they put those, it got rethemed to like Aladdin, and they put those at the entrance. Yeah.
So they were, in my world, they were outside in the Florida sun not long for this world, and I had an Aladdin attraction coming. So in the interest of fairness, let me take those 2 camels away from you, because I have a home for them. And besides, they spit on guests, and who doesn't like to be spit on by camels? And so they just lifted up that area, because it hadn't had a lot of traffic through it, frankly.
Yeah.
Because people would run through it to get a splash or thunder. But putting that there gave a family-friendly kinetic attraction in the center of Adventureland.
Yeah. And you said that the removal of the camels was kind of the end of Soundstage Restaurant.
Yeah.
They just decided like, that's
No,
enough.
dude. I tend to do that, I tend to breathe the angel of death on some of these projects. And that was the tipping point. Who knew?
Took Walt's office, you took the
I know,
camels.
camels, other things. Next interview, we'll talk and tell you the rest of my horror stories.
You took some booth from some parking lot somewhere
I
for
do,
Rock
I
and
did.
Roller Coaster.
Yeah,
They were using it, they just
Oh,
left
no,
it.
it gets, okay, so here, true story.
Okay.
So, and then I will be kicked off. But, so, as you know the story of Epcot, Epcot was kind of had an interesting but bumpy landing when it opened originally. And as a result, there were tons of artificial foliage that was never used back in a warehouse here.
Okay.
And so I had a project in Paris saying, I want that artificial foliage. So we just brought in a container, and they basically said, how much do you want? Let's get rid of it. So get that. Oh, and then there was another one in the Sorcerer's Hat at the Disney Studios, the Art of Animation. And there was, what was it? The Wendy Tinkerbell.
Oh, from the Happiest Celebration on Earth
Yeah, I
castle
took those
here,
too.
the gold. If
Yeah,
you remember the 50th Gold Castle here, Disneyland 50th Gold Castle here in Florida. I know that's confusing for the younger people, but 50th of Disneyland here at Disney World, we decorated the castle and we did these gold characters all around. And the characters at the top were the darlings and Peter Pan flying. And Paris at some point was like, we're going to fix up the animation building.
No,
and
that's not, almost the full story. The real story was, so people walked in, guests would walk into the studio in Paris and say, what is that hat with stars on it?
Yeah.
What does it have to do with animation? Because the name is just in English, not French. And there's nothing about that building that says screams animation. So again, I came through and like the angel of death and vacuumed up the characters and then put them into containers along with the River Guanadon.
Yeah.
That used to be an AK, and took that and threw
That
that
ended
in a
up on the
container.
backlot tour.
That ended in the backlot tour and other pieces of paraphernalia.
The Horizons.
I took that.
You took the Horizons. We know who did it now.
I did it. So, one man's trash is another designer's treasure.
Yeah.
So I took those and, it really went well and actually did fix the problem because now people walk and go, oh.
So
I
just
know.
so people could identify what the building's supposed to be.
And it brought energy to it. It brought purpose because otherwise you have building. Oh, well, there's a hat with characters. That must be interesting. I'll look inside.
Yeah.
Because part of what we do in design, you have to solve problems. And when I sit down at the beginning of any project, I do an interview with the person. I'll say, what are you trying to do? When we open, what will you point at and say, oh, that succeeded? What do you want to get out of this? And then based on that, it starts to create a framework that I work with the team to create something that hopefully leads to One Man's Dream or Cool Zone or to Rock and Roller Coaster.
Cool ship.
Cool ship. I designed it, I should remember it.
Did you do the sign? I mean,
Yeah, I did that. I do a lot of
It's
things.
a long time ago.
It was a lot of projects. It's like dog's age. You don't think in terms of years, you think in project years.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Imagineer Jim Shull. Thank you so much.
This is a pleasure.